10:15, but our plan is to stop at 10 so that we can entertain questions and engage in a more meaningful conversation. I'm Dr. Angela White, and this is where I have to kind of follow the bouncing ball. I'm the Senior Vice President for Strategic Enrollment and Retention Management at Johnson C. Smith University. I'm going to ask these gentlemen to my left to also introduce themselves.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Carl Roberts. I am one of our student success coaches here at Johnson C. Smith University. Again, I work with a specific group of athletes at our university.
I'm Chiamika Worthington, also a student success coach here at Johnson C. Smith. I work with the football and softball teams, and I'm an assistant football coach as well.
So his real name is Coach. He's a success coach and one of our football coaches.
Good morning. My name is Gentonio Pinckney. I am the Assistant Director for Student Athlete Success.
So we're here for a brief moment today to share some details with you about the overall development and implementation, as well as early impact that we've seen with our student athlete, student success program. So how many of y'all are ready to get in the game today? We know there's a game this evening, but the game is really right now. So we'll go ahead and start. We have a quick outline for you all. We'll share a bit with you about Johnson C. Smith University. We will also provide you with some context as well as the objectives for our session. Additionally, we'll provide more of a high-level overview of our student athlete, student success program, along with the implementation process, which we did provide as a handout for you on the site. We also will share some of the early impact and results from our first phase of implementation, and then we'll entertain some questions and discussion. We'll try to make it as engaging and interactive as possible. So with that, we want to quickly share with you the mission of Johnson C. Smith University. We are a small, private, historically Black college and university in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we proudly proclaim that we are the only historically Black college and university in Charlotte, which is like really outstanding for us because within North Carolina, there are a total of 10 HBCUs. So we are really a mecca in North Carolina of historically Black colleges and universities. Here you can see our mission, but I just want to highlight a few things that really dovetail to our student success program for our student athletes. We are really striving to develop and really move along students who can communicate, who can think critically, and most importantly, they can learn independently and engage in collaborative learning experiences. With that, we have our strategic plan, which we have framed as our golden blueprint. When you hear more about our student athlete success program, it's really aligned with pillar 4 of our golden blueprint, which is to develop and enhance, establish a cohesive retention strategy. So a lot of the work that we're doing is really along that line of retention and enrollment, but also we're focusing heavily on the development of our student athletes. Again, Johnson C. Smith, we are a small private HBCU in Charlotte. We proudly share that our sport management program is highly ranked in the nation, and our ranking has actually moved up. We're number 1 among HBCUs with regards to that program. And what you'll see shortly is that a good representation of our student athletes actually major in sport management. Also, we have 22 undergraduate degree programs, 1 graduate program, which is our Master's of Social Work program. Because we are small and intimate at Johnson C. Smith, there's a small student to faculty ratio of 12:1. So our students really receive a more customized and intimate relationship with each of our faculty and staff at the university. We are a part of Division II, which we've had extensive conversations about that. We have 14 NCAA Division II teams at the university. And Coach here is a part of this amazing undefeated. We are the only undefeated HBCU football team. And really, when you look across the nation, our football team is leading all teams, regardless of HBCUs or predominantly white institutions. And so we are 8-0, right, as of Saturday. In terms of demographics, I'm happy to virtually introduce you all to our 15th president of Johnson C. Smith University. She is the second female president at the institution, Dr. Valerie Kinlock, as well as an alum of the university, so she brings a different flavor to our institution. We are 75% Pell eligible, and 99% of our students at the university receive some form of financial aid, so this tells you a lot about the population of student that we serve. Additionally, 75% of our students are African American, and 25%, I have my director of our TRIO, Student Support Services Program, 25% of our students at the university are first gen. You can see that we're pretty much divided down the middle with regards to gender. And this year we experienced an enrollment surge, which when we look across the landscape of higher ed, many institutions are seeing a decline with regards to enrollment, but we actually experienced a 19% increase in our enrollment and a 40% increase in our first-time freshmen at the university. So we're doing some great things at Johnson C. Smith University. Here again, you can see this trend with regards to our enrollment, a lot of ebbs and flows, and particularly around the time of the pandemic. You can see that dating back to 2018, at one point we were almost at about 1,600, but then we've steadily taken a decline 13% downward trend. But then around 2021, we started to make some improvements with the way that we recruited students, but also how we began to support students at the university. And so over the course of time, we had very minute increases in our enrollment. And again, here you can see that with this enrollment cohort and the way that we also were able to retain students at the university, we have this enrollment surge of 19%, sitting right at 1,300 students. Now, with regards to our retention, I'm proud to share that we have seen one of the highest retention rates at Johnson C. Smith University in a while at 71%. And I'm super proud of my team for the hard work that we have engaged in. We've seen an increase in the way that we've been able to retain our student athletes, but also just our first-time freshmen, period. So you can see this very abysmal 53%. And one of the messages that I diffused across the university is that we don't want to see 53% ever again. And so with that, we began to work extremely hard to support our first-time students in a very intentional way, which has led to a 13% increase in our first-time student retention. Now, with our student athletes, and this is where the gentlemen here come into play, you all can see here that historically at the university, our student athletes have made up anywhere from 15 to 20% of our student population. However, I do want to give this disclaimer. I started at the end of January of 2023, brought in these two coaches here in that same year of 2023, June of 23, December of 23, and didn't bring Pickney in until August of 24. I wanted him there sooner, but it didn't happen that way. When we first came into the institution, there was no support system in place, structure in place for our student athletes. And as you all can see here, with them making up a significant portion of our student body, we need to make sure that we have something in place to support them intentionally. So with that, we see here that with our 6-year graduation rate, which is essentially used as a success marker for student athletes, but also now within higher ed, the 6-year graduation rate is typically used now as a standard success benchmark. You can see here that with our student athletes and the 6-year graduation rate that we fare pretty well across the higher ed landscape. When we think about the 6-year graduation rate, it essentially sits somewhere around 43% when we look at HBCUs. So our student athletes were performing above average for students just in general at HBCUs. When we look at the 6-year graduation rate across predominantly white institutions, it's essentially somewhere in the mid-60 range. And again, as you look here, there have been ebbs and flows with our student athletes, but they are right there in that range of where all students sit with regards to the 6-year graduation rate, but we know that we could do better than what we've seen. Here you can see our 4-year graduation rate, which is essentially in that mid 30 to low 40 range. So we weren't necessarily graduating a large portion of our student athletes in 4 years. And we've gone to the drawing board a number of times to try to identify what those barriers are and how we can move more of them along, because we understand that at the Division II level, only a small portion of our student athletes are going to move out here to this stadium. Y'all know what stadium? Yeah, the game is at 8:15 tonight.
And I'm a Browns fan.
Okay. Oh. So I may have said something wrong. I'm sorry, but you get the point, right? So with that, also, I took time to take a look at the average GPA for our student athletes. And you can see here that our student athletes essentially perform below a 3.0, which we know that that is all right in terms of NCAA compliance. But if we want to prepare them to go out into the workforce, we need to make sure that they're achieving at a higher level. Now, as I shared with my team, the thing is, this is global. So as I took a look at this 2.8 GPA, that is global across all student athletes at the university in 2022. And while, yes, some of our teams were performing at a 3.0 and above, only 34% of our student athletes at that time had a GPA above a 3.0, which meant a significant portion of them were not performing well in the classroom. And we needed to also find out what is it that's interfering with them engaging actively inside of the classroom. So here you can see our purpose statement, but most importantly, I want to direct your attention to our goals for this program. Essentially, we want to increase the first-time full-time retention rate for our freshman student athletes by 7 to 10%. We've seen this start to take place. Also, to construct a conceptual model that will be informed by the lived experiences of our student athletes at Johnson C. Smith University and context-specific data. So we're not trying to pull from the lived experiences of students who do not look like our student athletes at Johnson C. Smith University, nor do we want to pull frameworks from contexts that are not like Johnson C. Smith University. So what that means is that we are pulling from the actual lived experiences of African American student athletes at our university in the context of a historically Black college and university, pulling from the pieces that we know are very effective in supporting Black students, period, but also supporting Black athletes. And that's the overall design of our student athlete student success program. So in addition to that, our goal is to increase our 4-year graduation rate by 5%, to increase team grade point averages with 80% of our teams having an average GPA above a 3.0. I think you'll have some good data to share where we are at this point, and to increase our student athlete engagement in professional and experiential learning activities, whereby 50% of all of our student athletes engage in some form of experiential learning by their junior year. We understand that this is critical because of their dual role at the university. Many of them do not necessarily engage in experiential learning activities. They do not seek out internships, undergraduate research experiences, shadowing opportunities, co-ops, study abroad, etc. And so our plan is to shift how our student athletes engage at the university, and this is one of the starting points for that to take place. You can see here how we have framed out our student athlete program, where we are using these key theoretical frameworks to guide the way that we craft their experiences and also the way that we evaluate the work that we're doing by focusing on aspects of motivation theory, specifically looking at this balance between athletic motivation and academic motivation. Additionally, we draw from various identity frameworks where we're also looking at athletic identity versus academic identity. Is it scholar, athlete, student, athlete, or athlete, scholar, athlete, student? And then in addition to that, we are drawing from YASO's community cultural wealth framework, where we're looking at various forms of capital. This is a strengths-based and asset-based framework where we're focusing in on what these strengths are that our student athletes come into the university with, and how we can cultivate those through intentional interactions. And then last, everybody knows Tinto. So we're drawing from Tinto's integration theory as well. Now I'll walk you through briefly how we really implemented pieces of the puzzle. I do want to share that this is a multi-phase implementation approach where everything was not established all at once, but it was prioritized, and some of it was prioritized for us based off of hiring process. Does anybody know about that? Y'all don't know about that? Okay. So with that, these are the pieces to what I have put in place as an initial iteration of our conceptual model for our student athlete program at the university. The assistant director was essentially hired after a number of things were already put in place, as I mentioned, August 2024. But here you can see where we also have cohort-based freshman orientation course, where these two gentlemen facilitate the course in which our student athletes are enrolled. So they're able to engage with them 2 to 3 times per week through that course, through that orientation course. We also have in place priority registration for our student athletes. If any of you all, do you all have an early alert system at your university? You all use EAB Navigate. Some may have used Starfish or Grades First. So we have EAB 360, Navigate 360 at the university, but that was not implemented until last year, simultaneously to this program being implemented as well. So in the fall of 2023, I implemented progress report campaigns that took a more targeted approach, focusing specifically on our first year students as well as our student athletes, all of our student athletes, all 234 of them at that time. And so with that, 3 times a semester, our faculty actually submit evaluations on the student athletes who are enrolled in their courses. That creates a case if the student athletes are flagged at risk. And with that at-risk flag, it creates a case in which these two gentlemen will triage the case and connect with their students. Additionally, we'll talk a little bit more about our summer bridge program for our student athletes, which is called PASS for short, Preparing Athletes for Student Success. And so that has been implemented and was actually implemented prior to the implementation of this full program, but we have scaled it over the last 2 years. Again, some things were put in a little bit at a time, but we also have fully established our study hall across the board for all of our student athletes at the university. And then a piece that is unique to our structure is the integration of assessment and how we are focusing specifically on identity and motivation. So really drawing from an identity framework, we are looking specifically at their athletic identity using a measure, the Athletic Identity Measurement Scale, AIMS for short. Additionally, we also assess our student athletes pre and post using an instrument that was developed by a researcher at North Carolina State University, Dr. Joy Gaston Gales, and that is the Student Athlete Motivation Towards Sports and Academics Questionnaire, SAMSAC for short. So you'll hear us talk a little bit more about that. But here you can see our implementation of each of these different components. And I'll pass it over now to Coach. Yes, sir.
Question. So, faculty
A lot.
stubborn, oftentimes active, proactive. So what avenues can you guys go about actually talking below faculty grade?
That is an excellent question, and we'll talk a little bit more comprehensively about that, but specifically with the progress report campaigns, had an initial introduction to the progress report campaigns during our opening school conference. And then I had pockets of conversations. A lot of it came from my engagement. Initially, when I came into the university, it was as the dean of University College and Student Success. So I engaged actively with all of the other academic deans. And that was my initial entry point, right? So once I got the deans on board, and at that time, the senior vice president for academic affairs on board with it, they helped to galvanize their faculty so that they were more participatory in this process. But then also, in addition to that, I tracked and closely monitored the response rate to our progress report campaigns and communicated that out to the deans and chairs. So I will share with you all that when we think about the response rate to the progress report campaigns, essentially EAB, they see a response rate somewhere around 40 to 50%. On average, our response rate across all three of the progress report campaigns was roughly about 80%, 85%. So we had a very strong response rate initially. Again, I would send out to the deans who are very competitive as well. Like, I don't know if they were student athletes or if you assess them, how things would show up within them, but I would send that information out. I also led with transparency with the faculty too. So I made sure that they understood more of the purpose behind these progress report campaigns. If they wanted to see and presented to them the value for this for them, right? So you always have to show, like, how is this going to make your job easier? So if you want your student athletes in your classroom to do well and it lighten the burden on your shoulders, then submit this progress report. Let the coaches do a lot of the heavy lifting, and we'll track and monitor their progress over time and stay on top of them. So it was a combination of those different factors. Yeah, the department chairs jumped in, I would say, in the second semester, helped with that process too. But initially, it was engagement and interaction with the dean and the executive leadership.
You mentioned several things that are high cost. Technology. Was this program all change in model?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. It is a part of a more global university-wide transformation approach. So back in 2021, and actually within the city of Charlotte. So back in 2021, our current mayor, Mayor Biles, really did a strong push to get community investors to invest money into transformation, and this is referred to as the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. Through this initiative, it really is to level the playing field for African American students of color to have greater access to higher ed. So with that, a total commitment of $80 million was made to Johnson C. Smith University, and this pot of money, we're actually able to submit proposals to receive a portion of it. So at the time when I came in 2023, I crafted a proposal by looking at the data first, right? And allowing the data to inform why we need a structure like this at the university that was non-existent. And with that, I was able to secure the funding for it. So we do have an Office of Transformation Initiatives that really oversees a lot of these transformation projects at the university. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir, I'll pass it over.
All right, so in 2022 winter, when Coach Flowers, our head football coach, took over the football program, one of the first things he wanted to implement was a transition program for incoming freshmen that would allow them to have a level of success coming in with less pressure, being able to get comfortable in a college environment, get comfortable with their classes, which would help to retain those students as we went. So in the summer of 2022 was when the first cohort of the PASS program was implemented. So we had 40 student athletes that were freshmen that came in that first recruiting class. They were able to take our SMS 100 class, which is our freshman orientation course, as well as either a college algebra or a public speaking, which allows them to get some of their general ed courses started. So that was the basic framework for the first year. So in 2023, under Dr. White's leadership, we were able to expand that program and to add in student success meetings throughout those 6 weeks. So I was able to meet with those student athletes and go through study skills, time management, a lot of different things that would help them to transition, and also just check on them a little bit more tighter. So just keeping those checks and balances so we know how they're feeling, what their transition is looking like as they go through that process. In 2024, this past summer, we were able to expand it even more through a lot of preparation and just making sure that we're giving our student athletes what they need to succeed. So we implemented the career coaching aspect of it with Coach Quick, who's not here, but she was able to give them career coaching, different things with interviewing. We showed them how to tie a tie, a lot of different things to help prepare them for the process as they allow themselves to get ready for internships and things like that. We also did strength-based training with Director Pinckney as well. So just starting them off with the basis of understanding what their leadership is and how they can use those things throughout their career here. We also had some experiential learning opportunities where we were able to go to Duke Energy and see what they have going on there, get a tour, and just get a panel of people to pour into our student athletes, as well as seeing graduates from the university actually on the panel and explaining how their coursework that they took at Johnson C. Smith impacts their day-to-day working experience. Also, we were able to go and speak to kids. We were able to read to kids and just interact with some middle school kids over the summer, which was a big deal as well. We also implemented study hall, so we were able to keep expanding and giving them extra support. And within that study hall, we had tutors, and we were also able to go through our Upswing online platform, which we launched during the summer. And within that platform, we have all of our courses at Johnson C. Smith that are uploaded. So our student athletes are able, and all of our students now are able to get 24/7 access to online tutors via Zoom for any subject matter that they have, as well as uploading assignments and getting feedback from that as well. So it was a great opportunity for our student athletes this summer. So next part is going into our inside track coaching certification. So I'm going to put my actual football coaching hat on for this next slide. So we're giving you an overview of our training process to get us certified, and we're using kind of a football analogy. So the beginning part is training camp. So in training camp, you're really just getting all the fundamentals down, learning the system and all those things. So we're learning the methodology. We learned our 8 focus areas, our frame and clear and grow. Those are all different tools that we can use to help students work through their issues. So just giving us the basics. So learning all the terminology and everything, so we're all on the same page. So every student, especially student athletes that are getting training or getting coaching sessions from all of us coaches, are getting the same thing. The next part just goes into the ongoing training and development of us on our way to getting certified. That's just like practice in games. So you're going to reinforce those things, you're going to practice those concepts, and then you're going to get critiqued on those things as you go through, which leads us to the development and training, which is kind of like your film review. So as we were getting our training and going through certification, we're getting feedback from another coach who's listening to our coaching sessions and giving us feedback, helping us with issues that we may have, and also just praising us on the things that we did well. So the last part of that, which is the certification. So after we've done that well enough, we just relate that to being an all-conference player or winning the team MVP at the end of the season. So that was the certification. I'm glad to say that I'm an inside track certified coach, and
The
that was a great
MVP.
process. So our 8 focus wheels areas, these are things that we are able to touch point our students with as we have these coaching sessions. So anything from academics to managing their commitments on and off the field, which is a big thing for student athletes, which is much time as they have taken up. Their finances, how are they with their health? Are they on track to their completion of their degree? And then lastly, what are we trying to do with our career? Are we looking at internships? What is your life after athletics, after you graduate? What does that look like, and how are we preparing you for that?
Alrighty, so Coach kind of touched on what we can actually speak about in those meetings. This graphic kind of shows you the different areas, different ways we're able to touch it and reach our student athletes. So again, first things first is we attend 1 practice a week. So Coach Worthington mentioned that he has our football team and our softball team. We have a total of 14 varsity teams here, so that leaves me with 12 different teams. So for me, I was the biggest person trying to get out to outreach our student athletes, because again, this was a fairly new program, right? So getting in front of our student athletes in as many different ways as possible. So one way we were able to do that was going to 1 practice a week, right? So just showing up for them in a different setting outside of my office or outside of the classroom. And that also includes 1 game a month. So again, they're seeing support from their student success coach holistically as a person, right? Again, our student athletes are there first to get an education, but they are still athletes. So showing support for them in their area as well. And again, attending study hall. We do have team study hall. So again, for us, showing up in their study hall, having those meetings with them, bringing those tutoring to them in that study hall room. Dr. White mentioned myself and Coach, we facilitate our SMS 100 class, so our freshman orientation class, which is populated by our student athletes. So now we're able to reach out to them and instill those skills to them in an actual classroom setting. So again, us as professors, we're instructing them, and then again, as we have autonomy as professors, to be able to have coaching sessions in those classroom settings. And then again, the actual combination of one-on-one and group session, right? So again, we'll have those quote-unquote one-on-one meetings where they do come into our office and we kind of sit down individually, discuss any obstacles, challenges, or just general questions that they have. And then again, having 12 different sports teams, sometimes it is beneficial to have a group setting. So for instance, our registration is coming up for our student athletes. So for us, something we can do is I can get our men's and women's track team, have a group discussion about, hey, you need to register for classes, make sure you're in at least 12 credits, and getting them that information that they need in more of a group setting. But these are kind of our different frameworks for interactions that we're able to meet and communicate with our student athletes. This is some of our strategic and targeted outreach. So every year we know during which months what's going to be going on for our student athletes. So again, first is Golden Bull Academy, what we call our GBA. So this is kind of our summer orientation plans that are for our first year students at Johnson Smith. Freshmen, this could be transfers. This just allows them an idea of what to expect when they get to the university. So they can meet with residential life, answer any financial aid questions they have, just kind of get a feel for what they're going to get when they come to the university. Coach Williams touched on our summer pass program, which goes from June to August. Financial clearance, right? Are you able financially to be clear for your classes, right? Do you have any holes in your account? Are you missing anything? Progress support campaign, which go out 3 times a semester, which Dr. White mentioned. Again, we'll triage those cases. Midterm grade campaign, essentially exactly what it sounds like. So each semester, our professors are asked to submit midterm grades, so we kind of have that mid-semester point, okay, where are you at in the semester right now? And then lastly, just our enrollment campaign and registration blitz. We want to make sure our students are enrolled in classes for the next semester. And so kind of going to some of those targeted outreach to technology we use. Again, it sounds like people are familiar with EAB. That is something we use. And again, we have targeted progress support campaigns 3 times a semester, right? So we get these 3 times a semester to have an idea of where our student athletes are and what's going on in those classrooms. So the professors able to give notes. So again, we may see a note that the student has a high number of absences, or this student is in danger of failing, or this student could use some help from the mental health counseling center, right? So we kind of get an idea of where that student is at that point of the semester. So you kind of see here, we, again, having 237 student athletes, we will have a good number of cases between myself and Coach Worthington. And again, what we'll do is we'll triage those cases and start to individually meet with those student athletes. What helps us with that to manage all of these student athletes are by tagging our student athletes. So in our EAB platform, we tag them by what sport that they're affiliated with. So we'll see that this person, a part of the women's track team, has missed X amount of classes. So now I can know who that is. So instead of us having to go through a long list, myself and Coach Worthington could kind of pick our sports teams and go through those cases by our sports team. And again, appointment scheduling, we outreach our students very, very often, right? Our students are going to hear from their success coach, right? Especially our student athletes, right? They have huge demands that traditional students just don't have. So again, they're going to hear from us, as you can see here, with 1,007 appointments, and then 2,300 emails and 200 text messages. So again, we are actively outreaching our student athletes from the moment that they get here to the moment that they leave. So they're going to have a good relationship with us because they don't have a choice. Because if they run from us, we end up chasing them, right? So going to practice, going to games, going to classes, our students hear from us.
And the piece that they don't oftentimes understand is that these two guys played football and he played basketball in college, so they can't hawk them down. Real good. We just want to share with you all quickly that this program is theoretically grounded and framed. I'll share a bit more about the SAMSAC on the back end as you look at some of the outcomes that we've seen from assessing the students this fall. But that is more of an attribution-based framework where we're looking at motivation, aspects of motivation. Additionally, we are leveraging Brewer's aims or athletic identity measurement to look at the balance between their athletic and their academic identity. I'll have Coach Roberts to share just a little bit, and this speaks to one of the questions that you asked earlier with regards to barriers and some of the things that we've learned.
Yeah, so again, with it being a new program, student athletes having a challenging schedule, there were some barriers in interacting and engaging with our student athletes. And you kind of see the list here, but some that I'll pick out is just the schedule demands and that they have, right? So again, I'll just use our football team, for example. They have practices, they have lifts, they have film meeting, right? There are things that our student athletes have to do that they're a part of since they're an athlete at Johnson C. Smith. Some of those things makes it challenging for us to interact with them. So again, you kind of see on the other side of this chart things that we're able to do to minimize those barriers. And then again, having a strong athletic identity and mindset, right? When we get into the aims and the SAMSAC information, you'll see that a lot of our student athletes see themselves as an athlete, right? So the student side of it kind of takes a back seat. So when we're having those interactions with the students, right, some of those conversations, okay, what does life look like outside of basketball, outside of track? What do you want to do? What do you think about with your major? So again, when they have that high athletic identity, the conversations can oftentimes be heavy determined on their athletic side of things. And then again, just the transition on and off athletic teams. You see now when professional athletes, when they finish playing their sport, it's like, okay, what do I do now? And again, our athletes, they may not be professional, but because they have that passion and done it for so long, that's all they really know. So when they make that transition off of the team, having that conversation like, okay, there's still other things that you're talented in. What does that look like? So those coaching sessions kind of work with our student athletes to help them see what else they can do outside of their sport.
And as Coach Roberts really highlighted, you'll see where we are approaching them as whole students, right? So we're not focusing specifically on who they are as athletes, but really looking at the entirety of who they are, focusing in on their strengths, their motivations, their identity. So here we'll just quickly walk you through, yes ma'am, some of our early impacts and successes with the program. So that's a direction that I plan to move the program towards. This is just 1 year of implementation. So one of the things that I've shared with them is that we want to make sure that what we are leveraging as instruments and assessments, these variables and factors that we're focusing in on are reliable to the point where we can then move towards a more predictive model. I love the question though, because it's right down my road. So with that, fall 2023, you can see here now that we've seen an uptick with regards to the average cumulative GPA across all of our teams. And also I want you to hone in on the credit hour completion rate, where they completed 91% of the credit hours that they attempted. This is an outstanding achievement for our student athletes. We had one success coach when we first implemented this program, this guy right here. And so with that, he was able to meet with 73%. Remember, it was 234 of them. Right, I saw you in the back. He met with 73% of them at least once for coaching sessions. Brought this guy in December 2023, and he hit the ground running January of 24. And with that, now once we had 2 success coaches in place, we were able to reach 97% of them at least once. So staffing does matter. And this is where the proof is really in the pudding. Now, at the end of fall 23, we were able to get 80% of our student athletes registered. And once we did the run for spring 24, 75% of them were registered, and that went up as we engaged in enrollment campaigns and financial clearance processes. Please take a look at what happened with our football team. So when we first implemented this program, the football team's GPA was a 2.49. Within 1 year of implementation, when we looked at, and this again was with one coach, that team GPA went up to a 2.7. Currently, after a full year of implementation, our football team's GPA is a 3.07. So we've seen a 20% increase in the GPA for our football team, and they are undefeated. Right, so we flipped that, and they truly are scholar athletes. Here you can also see some additional early impacts where 53%, remember I mentioned when we first started this program, only 34% of our student athletes had a 3.0 or above. When we did our final run at the end of spring 24, 53% of our student athletes ended the spring semester with a cumulative GPA of a greater than a 3.0. So that's something that we're proud of. And Pinckney will share a little bit more, but you can also see that the course completion rate went up. This is what our teams currently look like here.
So as you can see,
He's tall.
I am. Even taller standing with my glasses on, everything got bigger. We're really excited about where we are and how we're coming into this semester. Like Dr. White was saying, the coaches have done a phenomenal job in getting our students. So with the summer pass program and with offering students course credit through our SMS courses, it not only orients our students earlier, but it also gives them time to establish a GPA, establish earned credit. And that in itself also jumped up. And so now we have an overall average GPA of 3.21. And so the same way we're going to cheer for our 8-0, I'm telling our athletes, I'm asking our crowds, all of our audience, we need to be cheering just as loud for this as we balance out student athletes in the performance on the court, on the field, but also in the classroom. So really excited about that because we are now over 80% of our teams have a 3.0, and every one of our teams have committed to a goal of a 3.5 so that we get our overall average for everyone with 100% of our teams having a 3.0 average.
So the lived experience of students speaks volumes.
Yeah, so this is a quote from a student, one of the students that we serve at our university. Again, just to kind of touch on some of the things that they mentioned. Again, how they wouldn't be able to exceed at the extent that they are academically, athletically, and mentally. And again, for us, the biggest thing is that working with the student holistically. Again, touching all aspects of them as a person. Again, being able to come to us and speak about their academics, but also sometimes I've had a bad game, right? Being able to talk to them about their athletics. And again, mentally, right? We understand how, again, at this point of the time, especially post-pandemic, mental health has become a huge conversation. So being able to support our student athletes mentally and saying, hey, maybe you need to go have a conversation with the counseling center. And again, just being someone that they can kind of go to and just vent, get some things off their chest. again, express any kind of challenges that they're facing as a student athlete.
So we talked a lot about the whole student. And one of our focuses right now is to really go, as I'm coming on and being onboarded, still haven't hit 90 days yet, but definitely we've hit the ground running this semester. So really our focus right now is to go deeper. We have a great framework in place with our interaction framework. And so now we want to go deeper with that. We've established a great foundation. So instead of that top-down approach, it really is a bottom-up approach. We got that foundation at the grassroots level. Now we're thinking about what does that look like at our 15,000-foot level. So obviously the coaches are continuing to attend practices. The data is telling us right now that those interactions outside of the classroom help produce more likely outcomes in terms of career seeking and looking for different opportunities when we're engaging students outside of the classroom. So those touch points at practices during team meetings are so important so that we continue to really emphasize that there's a balance and there's a resources available so that they really approach that dual role of being a student athlete. We've got more structure now. We have dedicated spaces. There are 3 locations in the library, 2 in where our offices are located in Perry Hall, where we have dedicated study hall space. Again, we're really excited about our GPA, but we know that even though there are 50% of students that don't have a 3.0, so we don't want to get so caught up in the averages and the wins that we're having that we don't leave students behind. So we're very intentional as we think about this framework as one whole unit operating. We leverage our study halls for academic engagement because of the data that we now have access to. When they're in there, we're able to talk to the students directly, engage them outside of the classroom, have some coaching in the moment to think about why you're getting those alerts, but also celebrate some of the kudos. We want to celebrate the successes, that they are coming in because they're doing phenomenal work given the demand that they have on all of their shoulders. Our individual and career coaching is going to continue. Again, it's shedding light on the lived experiences of our students. So we are having quantitative and qualitative data to help inform everything that we're doing as we continue to elevate the framework and go a mile deep instead of a mile wide. And so, as you can see, I really want to highlight too the leadership development and experiential learning. We have a great team of success coaches, so we're able to tap into them as they, like I said, quick shout out to her who's implementing a career coaching piece. Our success coaches offer workshops so that now students can, again, we think about the whole student, how they show up, how they interact, not just with us, but also with their professors, also with the opportunity for employers, fans, everything else, because they are representing themselves. They're also a brand of the university as well as their community. And so we want to really position them thinking about the whole student. You've seen the framework. As we transition our students into becoming professionals beyond the game, we're going to continue that emphasis as we think about the framework around how we look at our students as more than athletes and really think about their whole learning. So our focus areas that the coaches mentioned earlier also lines up with decades of research. Decades of research is saying that we have better outcomes when we think about the whole student. And that when they graduate, they're in a better position to not have a burnout, to really mitigate some of those transition challenges for those students that don't transition, where their dreams aren't realized to play professionally. So really quickly, as we think about these resources that we're building, we also just want to highlight our staff so that we are also building out our alumni network while we have our students with us. So we have an online platform that we've also integrated now so that students can build their profiles and we can engage. This is also led by another student athlete who is now transitioning. She's done with her eligibility and will be graduating in the spring. So she's come on as our student athlete social media coordinator. So she's helping design this and really engage our athletes in a really organic way. So we understand that they will have a sense of belonging, community, even after they graduate. So that we continue to grow our community from within, provide mentorship opportunities, resources. We're also going to use this to house our resources so we continue to have access to our workshops, even in this session, so our student athletes continue to have the resources they need to thrive in the environments on campus and after they graduate.
So to speak back to your question in terms of a predictive model, the SAMSAC and the AIMS will be a part of our predictive model. Again, with the SAMSAC, we're looking at motivation, We've administered this twice at this point. What you all are looking at now is the administration of the SAMSAC, which is looking at athletic motivation, academic motivation, where we sent this out to all of our student athletes. Our response right now is consistent of a sample of 135 students, where you can see the bulk of our respondents are members of our football team, but we have representation across a good majority of our teams here, and where the majority of our students are either freshmen or sophomores who have submitted to this. So this also gives us good time to work with our freshmen and sophomores. The data from the SAMSAC and the Ames, these two coaches will then use to build out profiles, and they'll incorporate this information into their coaching sessions with their student athletes. Here you can see the range of their GPAs who responded to this instrument. Now I'll unpack the Ames a little bit to you all. The Ames is looking at this balance between athletic identity and academic identity. I have a little breakdown so that you can interpret what each of these ranges mean. So a score anywhere from 7 to 21, and this is a Likert type model where there are a total of 7 items, and it is on a scale of 0 to 7. So with that, a score between 7 to 21 reflects low athletic identity, in that they do not necessarily identify as athletes with regards to their self-concept or how they primarily see themselves. Additionally, in that range of 22 to 35, this is a moderate athletic identification. So for those students, athleticism is essentially a part of their self-concept, but they have balance in their roles between being an athlete and a scholar. And then those who have a high athletic identity score, that's essentially going to be in the range of around 36 to 49. It is at the core of who they are. And so when we think about those with a strong athletic identity, they're going to be less likely to engage in academically oriented activities like study hall that we've been intentional with building out, completing course assignments. One of the things that we will soon begin to look at is the relationship between their high athletic identity and the number of early alerts that we receive for these students, particularly those that are high risk or at risk early alerts. If you will notice here, 91 out of the 135 respondents fall within that high athletic identity range. That's a lot of work that these guys have to do, right? Because they have to be even more intentional with working with them. And you can see here that across our entire sample, their Ames score is essentially a 38. So when you really frame out our student athletes, they highly identify as athletes first. So again, we have a lot of work to do, but you can see that the way that we've crafted this experience, it is still pushing them towards academic success. Here, I want you to take a look at our initial SAMSAC data. Again, we're looking at this balance between their motivation towards athletics, their motivation towards academics, and you can see that this consists of 3 subscales. So one of the subscales is their career athletic motivation, the CAM for short, the student athletic motivation, SAM for short, and then academic motivation. Those on the CAM, if it is between a 5 to 12, that is considered low career athletic motivation, anywhere from 13 to 21 moderate, and then 22 to 30 essentially high. And so with this, our average score is a 19.93, or basically a 20. So when we look at this, we essentially fall within that moderate range. And this indicates that our students in our sample, they have a moderate motivation towards pursuing a career in athletics. They have some balance that's there, but it's not necessarily the driving force for them. With the SAM, our student athletes' average score is around a 38. So when we begin to look at that range, it is essentially moderate for them or is actually high. So with regards to them engaging in different academic activities, again, these two instruments are speaking to one another, and that's one of the things that we'll look at in the future is the correlation between what we see as an output from the SAMSEC and what we see with the AIMS as a part of our model. And again, here, as we look at their academic motivation, our average score is roughly a 63, which on this scale is in the moderate range. So for our JCSU student athletes, they're showing a reasonable level of academic motivation, but it may not be as strong as their athletic motivation. And that's what we have to keep in mind with the population of students that we're looking at. I believe we have about 5 minutes left, so we'll highlight a couple of lessons learned, but please feel free to ask questions as we go through this process, and we're all prepared to answer those questions.
Yeah, so for this lesson, again, with this being a new program, myself not even yet to a year yet, there were a lot of things that we were able to learn and implement kind of moving forward. First thing first is just relationships matter. Again, building that relationship where they feel comfortable enough to come to the meeting. Again, it's easy to schedule a meeting, but are they going to actually come to it? So building that relationship where they come to the meeting and then you can actually have in-depth conversation where they're able to be kind of a little bit honest and honestly vulnerable with you to kind of say how they're really feeling, things that they're experiencing. And again, meeting them where they are, not always having them come to my office. So it's okay, I'll meet you where you are. Do you want to go to the CAF? Do you want to go, I can come to practice? Do you want to go to the library? Kind of meeting them at that middle point. And then honestly, keeping the coaches involved, right? It's one thing if they're only hearing the message from us, but now they're hearing it from their head coach, from the assistant coach. And now we have a new athletic director who's kind of all relaying that same message, right? So when you have multiple people getting out the same message, you're using the same verbiage, it sticks a little bit more to that student athlete. And again, using the student athlete's voice as well. Again, eligibility matters and should be monitored. So again, we're able to hire a new compliance director as well. So again, now we're having multiple people kind of monitoring our student athletes, right? Are you in compliance? Are you doing the things that you need to do to, one, be eligible to play, but more importantly, get through your time here at Johnson C. Smith University. And then again, I'll kind of pass it to Coach Worthington for the kind of touch on the Maymesters a little bit.
Yes. So one of the things where, from an athletic standpoint, making sure that our student athletes are compliant with continuing eligibility is trying to make sure that they have the correct amount of credits. So looking at Maymesters, looking at Wintermesters as a way to supplement whatever courses they may have struggled in, didn't get the passing grade that they needed in that class. That'll give us another opportunity to get that 3 credits, 2 credits, whatever it may be, so that they're eligible for the next semester. So just maintaining that understanding with the students of what they need, and then giving them extra opportunities to get that.
And this information came out in his coaching sessions with the student athletes where we were trying to identify some of the barriers to their success. And it was really the lack of availability of courses that they needed that were aligned with their athletic schedule. So I think I saw 2 questions here and maybe one in the back and off here to the side.
A highlight of my day. I speak and talk about honestly, I think y'all should be pitching this to every HBCU. Like, because we all need it, you know. Oftentimes, HBCUs, they can be in competition in ways that they should all be validated with our information, especially. But I encourage y'all to spread this information and make some type of movement where y'all get this, at least try to get this information. Let's already have a program similar. It's already a crisis right now with education. A lot of kids are coming in unprepared for college. So that's why programs like this to y'all. I really appreciate it. And the question, so for the past bridge program, you guys ever opportunities for athletes?
Yes. So this summer we did get a chance to go to a middle school. We were able to do some readings with the kids. We helped with some artwork, so they were doing projects. So it was a good time for those guys to actually get to be the adult role models for a change and help kids out. So we had a lot of fun with that. So just continuing to expand that to create more opportunities going into next year.
Sir in the back.
Yeah, I have a question. For summer, but also kind of how do you fund campaign? Are you scholarship? Not everybody is on it. Are they then?
Mhm.
Do they have to then submit the prior year FAFSA?
Yes. So that's the way that it works. Likewise, if you are around tomorrow at 2:45, the director of our Biddle Institute will talk a bit more about that program. But we do ask for them to complete the prior year FAFSA as well as the current year FAFSA to cover the cost for that. And then the cost for the instructors for the courses come from our provost line. But a lot of the expenses in terms of their tuition fees, housing, meal plan, et cetera, comes from prior year FAFSA.
Okay.
Did you have a question? Okay, great. Thank you all for joining us today. We have our information here, and would love to talk a bit more about our program. Thank you for your encouragement to continue to diffuse this program across our HBCU landscape. That is certainly our plan for this to serve as a model. We hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.